Welcome to the third hearing of the Portfolio Committee, number 7, into allegations of impropriety against agents of the Hills Shire Council and property developers in the region. The inquiry, which was sparked by serious matters raised in a speech to Parliament by the member for Castle Hill on the 23rd of June 2022, is examining the integrity of processes, employees and elected officials of the Hills Shire Council and the role and influence of developers and their interactions with councillors and members of Parliament in the region. I would like to, and I acknowledge, the Gadigal people of the Eora Nation, the traditional custodians on the lands on which we are meeting today. I pay my respects to elders past, present, and celebrate the diversity of Aboriginal peoples and their ongoing culture and connections to the lands and waters of New South Wales. I also acknowledge and pay my respect to any Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people joining us today. Before we start this morning, I would like to make a few important comments. As many would be aware, the committee has invited and now summoned several key individuals who could have potentially shed some light on the matters raised in the terms of reference. These witnesses, Councillor Virginia Ellis, Christian Ellis and John Claude Perrottet, have all chosen not to cooperate with the committee's inquiry to date. Indeed, some have gone to great lengths to evade process servers and avoid answering questions of this committee. This is extraordinary and demonstrates a lack of respect for the Parliament and the committee's very important work. With that said, I thank the witness who we will hear from this morning, Mr. Alan Hazelden, a former Hills Shire councillor, for making the time to give evidence. Before we commence, I would like to make some brief comments about the procedures for today's hearing. Today's hearing is being broadcast live via the Parliament's website. A transcript of today's hearing will be placed on the committee's website when it becomes available. In accordance with the broadcasting guidelines, the House has authorised the filming, broadcasting and photography of committee proceedings by representatives of media organisations from any position in the room and by any member of the public from any position in the audience. Any person filming or photographing proceedings must take responsibility for the proper use of that material. This is detailed in the broadcasting resolution, a copy of which is available from the Secretariat. While parliamentary privilege applies to witnesses giving evidence today, it does not apply to what witnesses say outside of their evidence at the hearing. I therefore urge witnesses to be careful about comments you may make to the media or to others after you complete your evidence. Committee hearings are not intended to provide a forum for people to make adverse reflections about others under the protection of parliamentary privilege. In that regard, it is important that witnesses focus on the issues raised by the inquiry terms of reference and avoid naming individuals unnecessarily. All witnesses have a right to procedural fairness according to the Procedural Fairness Resolution adopted by the House in 2018. If witnesses are unable to answer questions today and want more time to respond, they can take a question on notice. Due to the very short time frame of this inquiry, written answers to questions on notice are to be provided within 3 days of receipt of the transcript. If witnesses wish to hand up documents, they should do so through the committee staff. In terms of the audibility of the hearing today, I remind both committee members and witnesses to please speak into the microphone. And finally, could everyone please turn their mobile phones to silent for the duration of the hearing? I now welcome our witness, Mr. Alan Hazelden. Could you please state your name and position title and swear either an oath or affirmation?
I'm Alan Hazelden. I solemnly, sincerely and truly declare and affirm that the evidence now about to be given by me shall be the truth, the whole truth and nothing but the truth.
Thank you. And just before we commence with your giving of evidence, I just make a point that 2 of the government members have recused themselves for this part of the hearing on the basis that a declared potential conflict in that they were part of the decision makers of the Liberal Party executive during a pre-selection process for those selected candidates who stood for the Hills Shire Council at the last council election. Would you like to start by making a short statement?
Well, it certainly is very, very, very short. Alan Hazelden. I was on the Hills Shire Council as an elected East Ward councillor from 2012 through to 2021. I was Deputy Mayor under Councillor Byrne, elected October 18 through the year until the following September, October. Beyond that, I'm a retired mechanical engineer, and I'm on the board of a couple of, one not-for-profit and the other a private company in industry. That's me.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you. Yes, I'll start. Thank you. Thank you, Mr Hazelden, and the committee appreciates your cooperation and willingness to come and answer our questions today. So
And it's all part of the democratic process. I appreciate it.
And we really do appreciate, given where we've been, your cooperation. And you've already sort of gone to this, that you were elected in 2012 for East Ward. Could you just explain to the committee which suburbs East Ward within the Hills Shire Council takes in?
Well, I live in West Pennant Hills, which is a key population component, and East Ward from West Pennant Hills now extends into parts of Castle Hill, and I think even parts of Balcombe Hills today. In 2012, of course, before the council boundary adjustments, it extended into Carlingford and North Rocks.
Okay, but that's and are they still in East Ward? No longer.
No, they're not. No, they're all part of Parramatta City Council
that's
now.
Right. They were moved in terms of great. Thank you. And what made you decide to run for council prior to 2012?
Well, I entered what I call semi-retirement in 2011 after I'd headed up an American company for the Asia Pacific region for 16 years prior to that. And I had a call from the former member for Mitchell, Alan Cadman, who asked me if I'd ever considered running for council, and I hadn't, but I've always had an interest in politics first and community as well. So it seemed like the right sort of a thing to have a go at, and I got permission from my wife, which is equally important.
Very important, yes, very important.
That's when the process started.
Yeah, great. And obviously you were on council for quite a long time, 9 years or so.
Yes, correct.
And, was your intention to keep going with your council career?
Yes, it certainly was. Yeah, I felt that I was still sufficiently energetic and engaged. And of course, the thing about council, when you join council as a private citizen, you don't know anything at all about the workings of local government. And I'd involved myself over the 12 years that I was on council, 9 years, in a range of activities. I was on the audit committee, because I do have some finance background. I was in the Parramatta River Catchment Group when it was formed. I was a council representative on Floodplain Management Australia, and there were lots of insights into local government and the things that I had hitherto no previous knowledge of. So I felt that I'd learned a lot and that I was in a position to carry on and contribute to the community.
And it sometimes takes a while to actually understand that complexity.
Certainly does.
A bit of length of time is helpful in relation to that. Yeah.
Yep.
And so when, in the lead up to the election before you were able to run, had you indicated that you were going to run publicly, and had you actually submitted a nomination form?
Yes, I had. Yes to both those questions.
Yeah. And so there was no surprises within the local Liberal Party that you were preparing to run again?
No.
And did you think at the time that were you expecting that there would be a pre-selection? How did you think that, obviously you nominated, how did you think that issue would be resolved?
Like others, I was in expectation that there'd be a normal pre-selection. I was fully prepared for that. That's the process that I went through in 2012, which was enlightening. And that's what I expected would happen.
And were you aware that there were others who perhaps wanted to challenge you for that pre-selection during that, if there was going to be a pre-selection, were you expecting there to be others that would run against you?
Certainly. It's an assumption. And going back to 2012, which is my entree into local government politics, the pre-selection was, I won't say, it was hotly contested. Yep, there were a lot of candidates for the positions, and I was surprised at my personal outcome, but based on that experience, I was fully prepared to submit to a further pre-selection.
No, that's great. And can I just clarify that in 2021 you were the Deputy Mayor? You were still the Deputy Mayor?
No, I wasn't.
When were you the Deputy Mayor?
Late 2018 through 19.
Oh, right, okay.
Yep.
So,
there were 2 other councillors that held the role subsequent
and that
to me.
changed every year?
Yep,
That was the process? That wasn't...
Yes, it was. Yes.
Great. Okay, so I just wanted to clarify that. But you'd been the Deputy Mayor, so you had a lot of experience. And were you confident that you would be successful in a pre-selection if it was held?
I think so. That's confident is it's a very subjective
Confident
word.
as you ever can.
Yeah. And I was happy to stand before members of the party and say, this is who I am, this is what I've done, you know me, please vote for me.
Sure. And when were you told that there wasn't going to be a pre-selection for the Hills Shire?
I don't remember specifically, but it was late in the day. The process just dragged. There was little communication, and it was really, and I haven't, since all this happened in 2021, one sort of switches off from this sort of thing. It's not part of my life anymore, so I don't remember the timing of and from memory it was an email from HQ.
That's Liberal
HQ.
Yep.
Saying that there'd been, I think there was an inference that there was insufficient time for a normal pre-selection process, and that there was I think it was State Executive or HQ had endorsed a list of candidates without going through pre-selection.
And just to be clear, that was a whole new... So you had serving councillors. How many Liberal councillors were there at the time?
We had, of the entire council of 12 plus the mayor, we had 2 that were not from the Liberal Party. Two. Yeah.
So, but none of the continuing councillors were on that list, were they, when you were...
Yes, there were. Yes, there was a couple. There was a couple.
Yeah,
but
which 2 are the continuing ones?
I think Councillor Damassi, Councillor Jetty were on the list of candidates.
But the others were brand new.
Yep, that's right. Yep.
And did you know these other candidates?
I knew 1 or 2 of them, but I didn't know them as a group.
But you'd been a councillor for 9 years.
Yep.
You obviously know the area, fairly active within the Liberal Party in the community. But there was a list of councillors that had been endorsed that you'd never heard of before.
That's correct. Yep.
And do you know whether they were all living in the area at the time?
I certainly knew that one of the candidates for East Ward didn't live in the ward. In fact, I don't believe at the time he lived in the Hills Shire, but I think because of rules about business activities, he was entitled to nominate in the Hills Shire.
Yes, because they're on the roll.
Yep.
No, I see that. And my final question before I hand over to my colleague was, were you able to did you take any action after being, I suppose, just disendorsed by email? What was the sort of follow-up that you were able to, or did you pursue in terms of being dumped from a position that you'd held for 9 years?
I didn't, apart from making my sentiments apparent to my colleagues. It was clearly a fait accompli, and I felt that there was no good to be gained by further comment, either privately or publicly. So I really, literally just walked away from that at that time.
Thank you. That's all from me for the moment.
Great. Thanks again for giving evidence today. It obviously would have come not just to you, but to the team as a bit of a shock, given the circumstances you're describing? How did you feel at the time?
I'm not sure that it was such a shock, because there was a subtle build-up to the ultimate email, because time had just disappeared. There simply wasn't time, and everybody knew it. There wasn't time for a pre-selection. So I think it was just a dawning realisation that there was going to be a change in the nominees, or the candidates for the Hills Shire Council election.
And did you feel that that delay was related to this idea that the team might be changed over?
I did personally, yes, I did. Yep.
So the pre-selection had been delayed. This was your observation in order to facilitate that change. It made it easier.
The sentiment that I held was that the process was being delayed because there were discussions within the party organisation that were difficult to resolve, and as a result of that, the sand in the hourglass just slipped away. So I could see this coming.
Yes. And were you ever given any explanation to your satisfaction about why the change was required?
No. No.
Were you ever given any explanation, even not to your satisfaction? Did anyone say, look, this is why this is happening? The information I was getting was as much reported in the media as it was through anecdote. And it was clear to me that there were factional arrangements within the party that were finding it difficult to agree on a group of candidates. And there must have been some discussion between the 7 of you who were then not on the ticket. Did any of the others who you spoke to have any views about why this had happened?
I think similar to mine, similar to those that I've just expressed. There was a general sentiment, and I'd add that I joined the Liberal Party in 1992, and I have never aligned myself with factions. I think that factions are just a form of tribalism. I think they serve no purpose. I think they are potentially destructive to political parties generally.
And you would have made that view known inside the party. You would have been
very well known.
Perhaps proudly non-factional. Is that a fair way to characterise it?
Proudly not factional. But that was my banner.
And so you're saying that you had a general sentiment, and perhaps the team had a general sentiment, but really, as you describe it, not a clear sense of what the motive was for this change.
That's correct. Not a clear sense at all.
Yeah. Okay. I'm looking at the electronic ballot form, which was issued on the 15th of October 2021.
Yep.
You've already told us that a number of these councillors, perhaps one, perhaps two, was how I think you put it, did not live in the area. Was it one or two, do you think, who did not live locally?
Frankly, I can't remember. It was certainly one.
Yeah, at least one.
Yes.
You couldn't rule out two.
No.
Yeah.
But as I said, the candidate, although not living in the area, was entitled, and I checked this with the general manager at the time, was entitled to nominate as a candidate.
Yeah,
through
so you
business
raised
interest.
that as a concern.
I did, yes,
but
I did.
on technical grounds, they were allowed to.
Yes, they were. Yep.
Right.
Yeah, there was nothing illegal about the
Yes,
the
no,
issue.
understood. And one of the things that this indicates is that it should be noted that, I'll quote from the document, it should also be noted that other candidates listed above who did not originally nominate for these positions will need to confirm in writing with the State Director that they are happy for their nominations to be amended to include the ward and/or position listed above. Are you aware that some of these candidates who were selected, including in place of you, had not even nominated?
No.
So that's the first you've heard that?
Yep, that's the first I've heard of that.
Yeah, that as 7 councillors were swept aside, some of the councillors who replaced you hadn't nominated for the Hills Shire Council.
That's completely new. That's news to me.
Yeah, yeah. But I mean, this was the position put to in the electronic ballot to those who voted to replace you. And yeah, up till now, no one's put that to you.
I'm bewildered.
All right, thank you.
No, I mean, I would have just assumed that everybody went through a normal nomination process that I went through.
yeah, but
Well, I
not-
assume there was a deadline for nominations. Is that
There was,
the usual
yes, there
process?
was.
So your nomination was in, there's a
Yep,
deadline.
exactly.
The idea that it could just be given to people who hadn't even nominated, would that be outside the rules as you understand them in terms of the way the Liberal Party operates?
I don't know. The Liberal Party constitution is like all constitutions. It's a massive document. I'm familiar with sections of it, but not all of it, so I don't know.
That's fine, thank you.
The other thing this document says, and I won't name the individual candidates, it should be noted that proposed candidates 1 and 2, they're named in this electronic ballot, above have not been vetted. Again, I would have thought that was a usual process to vet the candidates before they're voted in, particularly over sitting councillors. Were you aware that the candidates who replaced you had not been vetted?
No, again, that's news to me today. No, I didn't know that. I mean, we were advised that our nominations would be scrutinised by an independent organisation. I think from memory it may have even been an American domiciled organisation that would vet the veracity of our nominations.
So you had been vetted, you had nominated, you had been vetted.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep.
In this pre-selection process. Yep. And I might just put one other element of this to you. In relation to the endorsement of local government candidates, the Hills, the electronic ballot says this: the state president has been advised that there is now an agreed position with respect to selecting and endorsing candidates to contest the 2021 local government elections in the Hills local government area. To your knowledge, was there an agreed position, or who agreed?
That was my assumption, that there'd been an agreement at, if I could use the term, the highest levels of the New South Wales branch of the Liberal Party.
Yeah, but you hadn't agreed. You were still nominating and hopeful. At no point did you withdraw? Or...
No, not at all. No, not at all.
Yeah.
No.
So it had been agreed by someone. Can you give us any guidance? Oh, well, we'll obviously pursue this elsewhere, but listening to that now, can you tell us who you think may have agreed to this?
Look, I think it was state executive. That's a body in the Liberal Party that I've never nominated for, never been part of, and the state director. The state director and probably the state president. But I didn't, as I said earlier, because this was happening at a late hour. I had accepted this. The term I used again was a fait accompli, and I wasn't, slashing my wrists over this.
Yeah, you seem remarkably at peace with it, which is very good.
Yeah.
That's a good decision, a good life decision.
Well, it's a good life decision.
But so really, in summary, you lived here.
Yep.
You nominated. You were vetted. But other candidates didn't live there, didn't nominate, weren't vetted, but they were selected.
Yep.
Is that a fair summary of the situation?
I think so. Yes, I think so. From what you've said to me today, yes, that's a fair summary of things.
And you knew that at least one candidate didn't live there, but you didn't know until now, years later, that others didn't nominate, weren't vetted.
No, I didn't know that.
Yeah.
I'd also add, just in relation to my own ward, that not only did one of the candidates wasn't domiciled in the ward, but one of the other candidates lived in another suburb in the Hills local government area, but outside East Ward. And I found that a little puzzling as well, because as I think everybody in this room knows, local government is about community politics. It's about community.
Yep. No, thank you. And who did you... I mean, this is obviously a big change in the ticket with little explanation, is how it sounds to me when I hear you describe what happened.
Fair summary.
Who did you hold responsible? Who was driving this process?
As I indicated earlier, this body that we know as the state executive, the state director and the state party president, I suppose they were they were the individuals who ultimately who rubber stamped this arrangement. But other than the state president, who I knew pretty well over the years, I didn't know the state director. I couldn't recite the names of people on state executive then, and I couldn't, well, probably with maybe one exception, but I certainly couldn't now. So I've never immersed myself in the party structure at that level, deliberately.
Yeah, but you felt perhaps that was part of the explanation for why, in your case, this change happened.
Yeah, I suppose.
When you look back.
Yeah, I'd become not so much a victim, but I'd become a byproduct of arrangements that were utterly outside my control.
Can I just ask, just on that, who was the one exception that you would name that you knew?
Well, I know that Councillor Byrne was on state executive for a time, but I don't think she was on state executive at the time this was arranged. In fact, I'm fairly sure she wasn't. There was former Councillor Jeffries, but he goes back to my first term, 2012. He was on state executive for a while as well. But other than that, I didn't know anybody personally.
And when in the sort of immediate period where it became obvious what had happened and that you weren't on there, did you get calls from members of the Liberal executive saying, sorry, mate, you've missed out? Or
No, not at all.
Okay.
I rang as the process dragged on, and I'm just trying to recall when it might have been, but it was clear we were running out of time for the normal pre-selection process. So I called the party state president at the time to just express my dismay at what was happening, and what I saw was a denial of the democratic processes which underpinned everything in this country. And he was very, he was understanding, he was sympathetic, but it was quite clear that there were things moving beyond his domain that were influencing all of this. So it was a very inconsequential conversation.
Thank you.
Can I just follow up that? Were you aware at the time, the reason for, the public reason for no pre-selection was the so-called lack of, running out of time. Were you aware, though, that at the same time the pre-selection for Hornsby Council, just right next door, was going ahead?
Yeah, I was, yeah.
And was that issue, raised, not necessarily by you, but by others in your team, in terms of why is it that Hornsby is able to do this, but this is there's some perceived non-reason for us not being able to run it in the Hills?
I read Councillor Byrne's transcript the other day, and I think she made reference to that, but had she not made reference to that, it was again something that had just slipped my mind in the intervening period.
Well, one of the things Councillor Byrne put when she appeared at the inquiry was she felt one of the motives for the change had been that she certainly was perceived as not as friendly to development as others might have been. Is that something you feel when you, either at the time or as you look back, that may have been a motive here?
I didn't feel that at the time. I felt that there were, in terms of this, of the tribalism that comes from factional disputes, and I mean the Sydney Morning Herald today has got lots of stuff about that very topic. I felt that they were the underlying issues for this. The issue of development of pro or anti-development didn't cross my mind. It wasn't in my perception of things. From a personal point of view, and I said this publicly in my pre-selection, I was in general terms pro-development. I believe in economic advancement. I believe in the rights of the individual, of free enterprise. So I had never nailed myself into a corner where that was less than clear.
Yeah. And you say that was your view at the time. Looking back from now, particularly after the revelations have been put on the floor of the chamber, these suggestions by Liberal MP Ray Williams that there may have been more going on, do you now have concerns that there may have been more afoot?
I do, but I was floored at the accusation, and I've said to a number of people, colleagues, acquaintances, family, that over my 9 years on the Hills Shire Council, I was not aware, even remotely, of any impropriety on the part of council officers or councillors. So I was completely surprised at the release of the member for Castle Hills claim under parliamentary privilege.
And to be fair, I don't think that statement did suggest there was impropriety by council officers or by councillors in your time. I think that's consistent with.
Well, it was simply a very broad assertion that something was not right.
Yeah. And did you feel, or do you feel, looking back, that it may have been the case that something was not right?
No, you know, when this parliamentary inquiry first raised its head, and even before that with the Four Corners program, when Four Corners approached me, I said to them at the time, look, I don't think there's a smoking gun here, personally. I'm not sure that I can contribute or help. I don't want to waste anybody's time, but I don't... We were in the term of council, the terms that I was party to, we continually approved very significant developments in the Hills Shire. There was never a suggestion, in my view, that we were anti-development. Of course, we disagreed on developments for a variety of reasons, but there was no overarching sense, there was no overarching direction that we were a bunch of NIMBYs, to use that hackneyed term.
Yeah, accepted. Looking at the more recent developments, though, since that time or around the time of this pre-selection, do you have concerns about the evidence that's now been given to this committee, where a businessman says he was approached for a significant amount of money, $50,000, to impact politically, to stack branches, was the view that was put to us, in your local area, to change the political complexion of your local area? Is that were you aware of that?
No, I wasn't, and again, it was a little like the parliamentary revelation. I was flabbergasted at that, disappointed, surprised.
And I mean, can you think of any reason why the witness we had, who I have to say appeared very credible?
I can't.
He came and said what he knew and said what he didn't know.
Yep, he's under oath, as I am. There's no reason for me to doubt what he said.
Yeah, and there's no reason why you believe the committee should discount that evidence or any motive he might have to...
No, not at all. No, it's up to the committee to assess the importance of that.
Yeah. Thank you for that. Can I might just see if my colleagues got any questions, otherwise I was going to turn to some other matters. I was just going to ask about some more general discussion about the political activity in this area, and I'm just interested whether you do or do not know anything about this.
Yep.
Are you aware of a group who refer to themselves as the Reformers?
No.
So that wasn't a name that was familiar.
No. I saw that name the other day, and I think Councillor Byrne's submission. No, I didn't. I wasn't aware of that group.
So you're not aware of activities associated with this group?
Nope.
You wouldn't be able to name individuals associated with this group?
No.
And you are not aware of a dossier containing details of their methods, their activities, including sort of dates, times and locations of their meetings that's now been tabled?
No. I mean, I would add that, and returning to what I said earlier, that because I have never aligned myself with a particular faction in the party, it's conceivable that some of the things which are now being aired were just things that I wasn't involved with.
Yeah. Yes. No. Understood.
Yeah, you'd made it fairly clear. In fact, it was really part of your own personal, I don't say brand, but I suppose values in terms of your participation as a councillor. It was very much that you're not factional. You're a proud member of the Liberal Party, not factional, not interested in factional games.
And I also believed in the integrity of individuals, that whereas they may publicly say that they are aligned with a particular faction, that when the secret ballot is, and that's why the secret ballot is such a powerful thing. The only reason I was elected in 2012, or pre-selected in 2012, was because the factional machinery obviously didn't work when people made their own private assessments of who they thought Alan Hazelden was and what he might be able to contribute for the party to the local community through council.
So do you think then, based on the desire to not have a pre-selection, as you said, just wouldn't guarantee the outcome that perhaps some of those factional players were looking for? If you were ready to front up to a...
I'm sure that's the case. I'm sure that's the case. I've said that to people over the years based on my own experience. Don't believe people when they say they've got the numbers. If it's a secret ballot... Yeah. I can see I'm preaching to the choir here.
I only ever believe the people who say they won't vote for you, has been my experience.
Good. I might just turn to one other matter to see if you can assist. We have sought one of those councillors who's replaced you to give evidence to the committee, Councillor Virginia Ellis. She hasn't been cited by her council colleagues or heard from since the 10th of February. Do you have any clues as to where the committee might find Councillor Virginia Ellis?
No, I listened to a transcript from Ray Hadley's show yesterday and he seemed to be able to... That's all I know.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't recall ever meeting Virginia Ellis personally. I may have at a function, but I don't remember.
But you couldn't give us any direction about where to find her? You haven't heard from her?
No, sorry. No, I haven't.
You're not aware of anyone who's heard from her?
No.
In general?
No.
Can you give us any guidance about the other witnesses who have also been very hard to find?
Unfortunately, I can't.
Yeah.
No, honestly, I can't. I have no idea where they are.
Yeah. And unlike you, I mean, you've turned up here to give evidence, you've told us what you do and don't know.
Yep.
They haven't. Are you aware of any reason that these witnesses have not appeared at this?
No, I'm not. I mean, I'm surprised that going back to the Four Corners program, which the ABC did, I was surprised that I was the only one of the former councillors that was prepared to make a contribution to that program. Equally, I'm surprised that none of my former colleagues have elected not to appear in front of the committee. I mean, I can't see that there's anything. I think that what the committee is doing is the appropriate thing to do. And I don't have anything personally to hide, and I don't believe any of they.
And to be fair to some of your former colleagues, the committee hasn't invited all of them.
Okay.
So I think I should place that on the record.
Okay.
But given you had spoken out publicly, I think that was the reason for the invitation. So I think that's important just to place on the record. We have sought these other witnesses. We've sought them. In fact, there's an attempt to summons them.
Right. Okay.
And there is no sign of them at all. Can you give us any clue about what these people have to hide?
No, I can't. I can give you no more indication than any other person on the street. I have no idea as to what their activities are, what their motives are. I don't know anything about them. Sorry.
Great.
Mr. Hazelden, did you meet John Nassif in your role as a councillor?
Yes, I did. Yes. Yep.
On a number of occasions? Or
no, just once.
Yep.
And I've thought a bit about this, going back to the Four Corners issue, because it wasn't a meeting that I recorded. I'm pretty sure it was when I was deputy mayor of that year of 2018-19, and I'm also fairly sure that it was because Councillor Byrne, who was mayor at the time, had called me and said, "Can you meet Mr. Nassif?" So I attended a meeting in one of Council's committee rooms where Mr. Nassif and one of his senior executives, whose name escapes me, he was in a senior role, and I remember the discussion really for two things. First of all, it was an extraordinary portrayal of what Top Place were envisaging, literally within 800 metres of where I live in West Pennant Hills. Ostensibly, the purpose of the meeting was to have Councillor Byrne and I express an opinion as to which of these three architectural styles was the most appropriate or most favoured. Until that point, we were aware that the Top Place were acquiring lots of land along Castle Hill Road. And I suppose loosely I was aware that there were some large things proposed, but it was when I saw these drawings that the magnitude of what was proposed staggered me. I was just, and I can't remember. I think they were of the order of 15 or 20 stories. Yeah. These were colossal structures. It literally, and I said at the time, this is like creating a small town in the middle of nowhere. I mean, there were 6,000 people going to be living here, just simply because the Cherrybrook Metro was there. And that's to say nothing of the Landcom development on the other side of the road, which was far more modest. So I remember that distinctly. That was one aspect of the meeting. The other aspect of the meeting, which I vividly remember, because I'd been in senior management over the years, was the way Mr. Nassif took over from the other fellow, and I was a little embarrassed for him. I felt that
for the other fella.
For the other fellow,
I see.
yeah,
right. Because
yeah.
he's sort of very boisterous and overbearing.
Yeah, an enthusiastic
right.
fellow. Yeah, good enthusiastic entrepreneur. But that's the only time. And I look, the meeting probably went for between half an hour and an hour. There was nothing in that meeting that was untoward or, as I said, the only thing, there were two things that surprised me, but nothing else surprised me in the meeting. And
did Mr. Nassif, in his verbose way, was it all on the assumption that this was going to happen, this was the development that he was?
Yeah, he was pretty bullish about the whole thing.
Yeah.
And I was sat there like the proverbial stunned mullet, I think. I mean, I knew that there was large-scale development proposed. And I'd been party to discussions with similar sorts of developments in Norwest Business Park, Bella Vista, around that area. But this was, to me, this was a very, very impactful meeting. It was a wow moment. Wow, this is serious stuff here.
And did you provide him what you thought your views might be in terms of the palatability of that proposal in terms of your local government, your council?
I don't recall doing that. Mm-hmm. I think I'd gone into the discussion with an open mind, because it was just simply this was a show and tell thing. And I think, thinking back, I was probably so stunned at the enormity of what I was seeing. And I was mindful of the fact that we're not talking next year. We're talking these projects take 5, 10, even 15 years to develop. But no, I don't think that I don't recall telling Mr. Nassif and his colleague that this was unacceptable. I mean, I was probably ambivalent about it, but I do remember saying that I thought of the 3 architectural proposals that were put forward, the one in particular just looked nicer architecturally, but that's all.
Thank you.
Can I just, so when you were stunned sort of at the meeting about how big it was,
Yep.
As you were sort of thinking about it, going, into the future after that, did you have a sort of view about how it was going to actually meet the controls that were currently in place? Was it sort of obvious that this was outside the current controls, or how did you think, did you have thoughts about how council was going to manage such a large development that was being proposed? So did you have sort of things, not asking.
Yeah, no, I understand where you're coming from. Look, Mr. Edgar, in his submission, made a number of comments about the integrity of his planning staff, which I unreservedly echo.
And can I say I'm making zero allegations?
I realise that. Yeah. So I was confident that whatever any developer was going to put around the metro, the Cherrybrook metro station within the Hills Shire, would be subject to the same sorts of appraisal, scrutiny, criticism, observation that all similar developments would have. So I wasn't concerned about that.
Yeah. Okay. Great. Thank you.
And just on that description of the meeting that you've just given, you've said this was serious stuff. You're really referring there to the scale of the development here, thousands of apartments.
That's right, yes. Yep.
And you've already characterised yourself as not anti-development.
No, not at all.
But this was on another scale.
Yep, certainly was.
To what you had looked at or considered or supported in the past.
Yep.
And of course, thousands of apartments, a significant amount of money if this was approved. That's a
yes, of course, yeah, serious amounts of money. I mean, it's a very, very large area. The section, the properties that Top Place now own along Castle Hill Road. I don't know how many hectares, but it's very substantial. It's a substantial investment.
A substantial investment. Mm-hmm. The stakes are high.
Yep.
For Top Place.
Yep. The other issue on the southern side of Castle Hill Road is that of geotechnical issues. There is some land instability in that area, and as there is in other parts of the Hills Shire. So for any of that land to be developed substantially, there has to be a significant amount of preliminary civil engineering. So that, to offset that, and we've had this argument not infrequently within council in my time, to offset that cost, height is pretty much a given. As to how much height, that's a question of economics.
Yeah. No, understood. Thank you. Good.
Can I just go back? When, after the news or your receiving of the email about that, you hadn't been successful.
Yep.
Did you and the other unsuccessful, your colleagues, the other unsuccessefuls, sorry to put it that way, but
sure.
Perhaps you were successful in other ways, but did you then collaborate? Did you have a conversation with those other councillors and the former mayor about, what had happened, who was responsible and how, any more than what we've talked about, you've proffered your views and your understanding.
Yep.
Did you then have a conversation and hear others' views?
And to the extent that there was a broad agreement that we shared the same sentiments, that we were the byproduct of a factional arrangement within the party. But we didn't. In fact, a few of us got together and had dinner as a sort of a post-reflection dinner. But even that dinner, which was at was a hotel in Norwest, we talked about issues other than politics and council as much as anything else. We'd been a reasonably collegiate bunch of people. Some were more factionalised than I was, but we didn't. It was done. There was no point in beating your breast about this sort of thing.
Mm-hmm. And did you have any views on the former mayor running as an independent?
I thought it was. I thought it was brave and perhaps a little foolish, because in the preceding election, we'd had a councillor who had been not endorsed by the party through the normal processes, who decided he would take the party machine on and run as an independent. And I think he ran under the banner of, I can't remember what the political banner was, but he acquired about 14% of the vote, I think, which was significant, but nowhere near enough to assure him under the process of. It's very difficult, I think, for independents in local government to stand if there is a party standing as well, a party machine standing as well.
And it sounds like perhaps particularly in the Hills Shire as well.
I think so. I mean, as hard as I tried to work when I was on council, I could walk through Castle Mall after 9 years on council, and I don't believe many people would recognise me. Mm-hmm. So I wouldn't stand as an independent. I think it's folly at this stage.
And I just want to go back to one of the references you made. You were just talking about the discussion you'd had about the pre-selection.
Yep.
The discussion on the phone that you said was in the end not consequential with the president. I took it that you were referring to Liberal President Philip Ruddock.
Yep, correct.
At the time, yeah. I just wanted to clarify
yep,
that.
Yeah, it was, yeah.
Thank you.
I don't have
I think that's
more. Do you have anything, Mr. Barrett?
I can, but we can also wrap it up a couple of minutes early.
Yeah. All right. Well, thank you. Thank you very much. Yeah. And there's been no questions for you to take on notice, so thank you for attending.
Well, I'm sorry I haven't been very helpful, but
no,
I did.
You've been very, very helpful. Now, look, some of the committee members, if they do have additional questions for you,
Yep, that's
they will
fine.
contact you. You will be contacted, and the answers to those to be returned within 3 days. But the Secretariat would be
That's
in
fine.
contact with you.
Yep, that's
Thank
fine.
you very
Okay,
much for
you're
your
welcome.
cooperation and willingness. Thank you.
Welcome.
Thank you.
Great, thank